does PW stand for in the equation that we are seeing? How many people actually know what these equations are? And for all the bold enthusiasts, please type on the chat window if you know who is the person with the white beard. Okay, fantastic. So somebody has started typing. I am not seeing the chat screen by design, but I'm assuming that there are people who have started typing. Maybe if Dr. Shiva, you could confirm, or nobody recognizes. Okay, so we'll go back to the previous slide. So what are we seeing here? There are a few terms that are incorporated. On the left-hand side, my left-hand side, the person with the white beard is Alexander Graham Bell. Person with the black beard is Professor Erlang or Dr. Erlang. And what are we seeing on the right-hand side of it is the famous Poisson equation, which many of us have been using it in Excel or embedded Excel, or some of the purists like me who would prefer to use a slate and a chalk and work on some of the formula that comes across. PW here stands for what is the probability to weight, right? This is an Erlang C calculator. What are the two terms that we are seeing out there? Uni-high, absolutely very, very contemporary 21st century finding, Nobel Prize winning award that has come across. Previous slide, please. Yeah, Uni-high is absolutely there. Voyager is something that is going to be, that has been into the space, external space now, while we are taking pride on being in moon. It has gone beyond the solar system and has been in existence. There were two Voyagers that was rolled out in September of 1978, almost about 50, 45 years ago, is when this was absolutely run across. Now, please do Google on what Uni-high is, and we will come and spend some time on this while as I'm continuing on my pathway, right? It is about making some game change, and it is all about being able to drive the necessary change within one's own self, right? So if I'm not able to drive the change within my own self, I cannot drive it for the organization, and consequently I cannot drive it for the industry, and I would become irrelevant. And the moment I become irrelevant, I have the tendency to become obsolete. However, there are certain ground rules that remain absolutely etched and cemented. So why would a 100-year-old formula come to be used in an unknown industry, while this was devised and designed for staffing needs, when Alexander Graham Bell had invented the world famous line when he said, "Hello, Watson, can we catch up? Can we meet?" And the staffing lines that we are seeing out there on the pictorial representation is what is going to manifest in slides that are going to follow. And if we move to the next slide, there are some points that we need to ponder upon. So next slide, please. Yeah. If we are not willing to head towards towards establishing the value, right? If we are not able to drive value, we will become obsolete, right? And that was the point of obsolescence versus relevance that we were talking of. We are invaluable. The first detection point is, whatever are we doing, is it relevant or not? The choice is up to us in terms of what we would want to be. Thomas Jefferson, again, does not need any introduction, but for the purists who are not aware, he was the third president of USA who had actually written down the famous Declaration of Independence, and most importantly, was in a fantastic position to drive a pointage which holds relevance even today, right? If two individuals get together and exchange $1, each walks away with $1, right? If the same individual gets together and exchanges an idea, they both walk away with two ideas. That's the beauty of what happens when you are ideating and when you are exchanging ideas. And obviously, when two competent WFM professionals ideate together, right, well-oiled execution happens, magic happens, miracles are created, and that is how the crescendo of influence starts getting built up as we start moving on to the next slide, please, Dr. Shiva. And now comes the perspective, Dr. Shiva did talk about some of the research elements that were in place. Uh, I don't know if Sri Vidya is there on the call or not, but she has been a very instrumental player. Sri Vidya from GWFM has been a very instrumental player who has helped me do the research. She came out with data, information, facts. I converted those facts into 8 bold lines, and I would suggest all of you to internalize each of these lines. Uh, Reskilling is no longer a spectator sport, no longer an office Olympics, right? It is absolutely relevant and important for us to look at in the third decade of 21st century when we are talking in 2023, right? So technically we are fourth year of the third decade getting over. So I think it's important for us to really look at in terms of what do we invest our time today, and whatever time I am going to invest today, is that going to be of relevance in 2030? If not, do I need to invest the time on it today? There may be some requirement of investing the time that may come across, but that thought process has to start at a WFM leadership level. Does not necessarily have to remain confined at a WFM leadership level, but I think it is really important for WFM leadership to start thinking about it. GWFM has an ownership there. New wave of employees are coming, right? I think millennials or millennial mindset, etc., all of that is history. It is passé. It will cease to be of relevance in another 6 months down the line, if not already irrelevant. So the perspective is very, very clear, very, very simple. Are we in a good position to uh, to look at uh, the way the gig economy is rising and reinventing itself, right? Uh, the workforce is absolutely liquid. The workforce is absolutely. We all have experienced remote workforce now for almost 3-4 years time frame. There used to be a time when work used to flow um, along with people into office. Today, that thin fine line is absolutely over, and we'll touch upon it in a while. Uh, who is going to be tigers of number game, right? The number skills in itself is going to be irrelevant. It is absolutely irrelevant even now. Chat GPT is the setup that is coming across. What is going to bring into is the very, very focused drive of uh, looking at a number in a very, very different way. We, we have people who are present here, right? When I started, I had put up a Poisson distribution and I had put up a PW, right? Probability to weight. That is the essence that we had actually incorporated. Now PW is absolutely irrelevant because even in last 2 decades, I don't think so anybody would have had used, and people would have had used the word Erlang and Erlang calculator at the back of the mind, just like they eat uh, idli with a sambar, or let's say a pancake with honey. Uh, fact of the matter is, fact of the matter is that nobody would have had gone into the depth of the stuffing formula numbers that are coming across. People who are purists and oldies like me, possibly fossils and um, archaeological folks delight, would be the one who will take passion in terms of being able to do the numerical formulae. Fact of the matter is, the tigers of number game will be defined and determined by the skills that people have, and for folks who don't have it, can they collaborate, can they compete, or will they find a new way and say, I would be collaborating, I would be competing, and I would be making use of the good old adage of powered by intel inside. And what that means is, there is a very clear convergence, and there is going to be a very clear emergence of design thinking in WFM. That's a reality. GWFM has invested last 2 years uh, immensely on looking at design thinking. There have been hackathons that have been conducted, I think, way back in 2019, pre-pandemic era. There were series of design thinking sessions that GWFM has conducted. Uh, it's important. It's important to identify the mechanisms, who the star employees in WFM teams are. Go ahead, go ahead and invest design thinking on them, because if we don't do it today, there will be a very different connotation of what is going to evolve as we look at it. What was a hot skill at one point in time, right? Forecasters used to they still command a great level of premium. A fact of the matter is, it is all going to become irrelevant in maybe another 12 months. The whole context of value of workforce, linguistics, and relationships is going to undergo change and churn. And if we are in a great position today, so that we are able to look at uh, the linguistics that workforce would be using, or the linguistics that would attract the workforce, or the relationships that needs to get built across, and all three of them have been put into a cap and quote or inverted quotes, with a purpose, right? The value is only going to emerge and is going to be very, very different from what we have been seeing right up to 2023. 2025, 2026 is not going to be any different. And for purists on this forum, about 2 years ago, when I had said great resignation is a myth, and there were many folks who sort of looked at it very differently. Last year also, when I was making that statement that it is outlived its utility, and I think it was a GWFM function again, annual event last year, where that particular statement was made. Reality is everybody knows where that great resignation hype had gone all across. I'm not saying it was not true, but I'm saying it was overhyped and was not understood in the context. Whatever was being thought of a never-ending boom did not last for more than 14 months in that cycle. 2025, come February, come March, things are going to be very, very different from the way societies are going to be undertaking. And whether we look at the world or the workplace, whichever way one was to look at it, AI has a role to play, and AI will continue to redefine itself in next 12 to 14 months. The same way as, let's say, a cloud has undergone a series of churn and change in last two plus decades, so to say. Obviously, flexibility and work-life integration is an important element. What do these 8 points mean? The board has to look and change the strategies. The board has to look and identify, is WFM really going to be the player? So that is where the emergence and convergence of thinking going to start shift towards, if it has not already started in various organizations. Or is there going to be a redefined, say, new entity called whatever force of management, right, versus workforce management? So both will still remain WFM. Question is, the WFM of workforce management, the way we know today, is it standing at the juncture of being irrelevant, being obsolete, or is there more that is coming our way? And the only thing that is going to drive is what we will start seeing in the next slide as we start making a movement. And what does the next slide contain? It contains, so if you move to the next slide, please, a generalized WFM practice. Nothing is going to change in terms of the disciplines, right? The 7 disciplines are integral. They will continue to remain by some name or the other that may be called across. It will be old wine in new bottle. Disciplines are going to remain etched. The same way Erlang calculator has remained etched for almost 100 plus years now. And the same way the staffing needs, the way we are determining them, whether it is an assembly line, whether it is the inventory management that is being undertaken in a production planning environment of manufacturing base, or it is the component manufacturing that is being undertaken for electric vehicles that are getting created and crafted and generated today. Nothing is going to undergo change for maybe another 2 centuries, 3 centuries. Just like 2 plus 2 will always be equal to 4, whether we uh, uh, do this addition in 15th century or 21st century or maybe 30th century. Uh, Likewise, the whole context of, if I can use the word, sine square theta plus cos square theta is equal to 1 would continue to remain the same in whichever stage we were to look at it. So a typical generalized WFM practice, very clearly and very categorically, is what is reflected in the slides that we are seeing. Domain, discipline, community, mechanism, and importantly, determinant. What is domain? The flow of work, flow of people, flow of information, and flow of performance. Let's look at it. While I was stating the liquid workforce and the way the whole definition has undergone change, and we have experienced, all the WFM professionals have experienced in, let us say, uh, the post-pandemic work from home, work from office, and the percentages that need to be within brick and mortar versus the context of what should be at home, in itself is a core deciding factor. The whole segregation of different channels that come into play, right? By whatever multimedia channels are there, the medium in itself is going to get redefined, right? So as we start getting into the Uberization, there is flow of work which comes into play. Uh, so what was the genesis, right? The genesis was all about empowerment, and who was getting empowered? It was somebody from the community who was using uh, felt empowered. Drivers felt empowered because at the click of their palm and their button, they knew where they were heading to, who are they heading to. They did not have to wait too very long. The billing errors were not there. There was no bargaining that was required to be undertaken. A predefined rate would come into play. Drivers did not have to remain into an idle capacity for very long, and it was not in search of that demand they were burning the fuel and likes that get associated. I don't want to describe Uber as an industry, but the context of flow of work is what needs to be linked with the empowerment that we talked about, right? For the for the passenger or for the customer, the uh, empowerment came across at the click of button. They could book, they could cancel. They did not have to worry about making the payment, bargain, and negotiate with the driver. All of that was taken care of. And then most importantly, it became an on-demand, uh, right now, right here, when I need it, for the place that I need it, well, as long as I need it. All those constructs started coming across, which was the sense of empowerment. Bring it down into whatever industry, whether it is an automotive industry or airline industry or banking industry, whichever sector we may want to look at. Fact of the matter is, there will always be a processor, and that processor will continue to reinvent itself. All those constructs are something that is going to be devising mechanisms of influence, so to say. What is coming out in community, and that is where I will want a lot of us to focus our energy. When we talk of influence and we talk of influencing mechanisms, it is always going to be driven by domain, discipline, and the determinants, but it will never ever be governed and ruled by them. It will always be an influencing mechanism that will come across from a community standpoint, right? So if we were to look at it, where is the impact? Question number one. Second point was, who is going to be impacted? Third question was, what is going to be the trigger to impact? And we will spend some more time on it. But all I'm saying is, as we have progressed across and as we have started having the conversation from slide A that we started to this current slide that we are staring at right now, I will just draw the attention towards the domain side of it. The surest and the most important way for driving an influence will always stem from domain. Uh, the most important trigger and driver for driving influence will always be on to community and for community, that will always be subservient. And most importantly, the determinants will always come across. So what does a WFM practice constitute as a determinant, right? So at a very purest level, we assess the demand and we plan the supply to meet the demand, and then we execute and monitor the planned supply that was generated to meet the demand. Broadly, those are very three high levels of determinants which define the building blocks of workforce management or whatever for management, whichever way one was to again look at it. If we move to the next slide, please, we will realize and relate that influence actually has a construction with about 13 different words. Uh, and there is a 14th one which is coming across into two different colors. But if you use the word IN as a prefix, uh, first two alphabets of influence, take out IN and start putting it, right? What is the input? What is the income? What is the insight? What is the interest? What is the intelligence? What do we inherit? What inspires us? where do we get involved into? What is interpersonal? What is inquisitive? Can we inquire? Whom do we invite? What do we instruct? Right? I think these 13 broad parameters are the aspects that will link across onto the determinant. Again, link it back to the Poisson distribution formula that we had, and the PW that we were looking at, right? Probability to weight is clearly going to be something that we will be looking at. Where does influence comes from, right? And what do we want to influence upon? It is about the stakeholders that one needs to very categorically focus and look at. So what does let us say a stakeholder gets associated with? Let me take a step back. Who is a stakeholder in many ways if we were to define our own charter, so to say? Right? Stakeholders are people who impact your work. Stakeholders are people who are impacted by your work. Stakeholders are people who impact you. Stakeholders are people whom you impact with your work. And these four broad constructs, if you were to look at it, are the fundamental DNA or design DNA for determining in WFM Professionals Charter on what do we influence on, why do we need to influence on, and we'll come to the series of those questions once again. In a purest form, influencing is always going to be something which inspires, right? Inspiring in shaping, inspiring, shaping and thinking, inspiring actions, inspiring motive of others, right? So if that inspirational element is not there, influence is not going to come across. It may be a positive influence, it may be a negative influence. That's a different thing. We are not getting into a psychological dimension. We are just going to remain stuck to the fundamental device and design of a WFM professional, and identifying ways and avenues in which we inspire what I call it as a ABCDE. So inspire the change, inspire the metamorphosis, and what are the changes that comes into play. And this is where the psychological dimension comes into, right? So what is it that we are wanting to change? Attitude, behaviors, confidence, drive, energy, passion, logic. What are we wanting to change? And what exactly is the drive that comes into play? And experientially, historically, it has always been very well observed by various studies that have come into play, right? Whether in what may be called as an operations research, now most bro-beaten term called analytics, uh, or erstwhile production planning and control from a manufacturing base. I think if we were, or workforce management or whatever for management, I will continue to harp on these two terms just to drive the point of obsolescence versus relevance, and invaluable versus obsolete. I think those were the ground rules that we had laid down. And the question is, where is that ABCDE getting inspired from, right? Are we metamorphosing attitudes? If so, why? If not, why not? I think those are the probing questions that very clearly comes into play. If you move to the next slide, please. Uh, Hexave that we are seeing is a hexagonal model, and there are six broad avenue that comes into play, right? And that is where the influencing will be driven. What are some of the aspects that a WFM professional has to be very, very confident, and I'm talking about the WFM leadership, and WFM leadership here is not a title. The point that I'm trying to bring out is you do not need an authority to be an influencer, because what is the relationship of a person who comes across, and I'm just saying, if there is a name called Roger Federer that comes into play, uh, and Roger Federer comes and wears a particular watch, and he says that this is the watch that has always uh, pushed pushed Roger Federer into the right time. Little does one need to know that Roger Federer is actually talking about Rado, and uh, even if Roger Federer may not be related to anybody of us, there is a very clear chord that comes into play where we are able to associate and relate to what and who Roger Federer is. So the ground rule, and the first ground rule is you do not need a position or a title or an authority to be an influencer. Point number one. Note WFM professional, if anybody is telling you, uh, do ensure that you have always said that, I mean, at that point in time, please be very categorical in terms of making a statement. You are the influencer. You as a WFM professional is the influencer because you have the domain, you have the competence, and you have the expertise. And we spoke about domain as one particular area of a general WFM practice, right? We spent that time on that. So what is that hexave that we are looking at? It is the hexagonal model of the Octavian notes, right? Octave is 8. So these are the 6 bullets that we are seeing across. Uh, Nobody can influence if there is no rapport. And the rapport has to be established depending at the level at which you are playing, at a personal level, at an interpersonal level, or at a public level. Public level means when it goes beyond the interpersonal level. Let's say it goes beyond the organization that you are working. It goes beyond the industry in which you are operating. It goes beyond the community in which you are influencing. It goes beyond the nation that you are transcending, right? I think that is how you need to keep on looking at making it more broader, more macro in nature. None of the influencing will be sustainable if you have not earned the trust in the process. And that is where the ground rule is. So think of it this way. We spoke about WFM practice, we spoke about domain, discipline, we spoke about mechanism, we spoke about determinants, we spoke about community. And that point in time, we had said, what are the questions that we are looking at it? So ask yourself a fundamental question. What is the why of what we are doing? If that question is not known, and if that question is not answered, trust me, you will never earn trust. Trust me, you will never earn trust. Converse is the case. If what is the why of what we are doing is absolutely known and we make it known, trust me, the trust is going to be sustained, superlative, positive, everlasting. Sustained, superlative, positive, everlasting, right? I think that is another key context. And once when you have done all the three of them, you have built your own domain expertise, you know what is going to be undertaken, why is very, very clear, you have established the rapport, you have earned trust. Don't leave it at that. Identify the champions who are going to stand up for your cause. This is a very, very critical and most difficult one. The who. What is the who of who I want to go to? Once again, what is the who of who I want to go to? Right? Identify the champions because it is the end of the day, those champions who will sustain your influencing beyond you. Establish the collaboration, establish the coordination path. Both are important. As you coordinate, identify who your collaborators are, identify who your champion in the amongst that collaborators are. What are you going to collaborate on? With whom are you going to collaborate on? How are you going to set up the collaboration? And then, most importantly, very, very important if the 5 things have been undertaken, acknowledge, brandish, celebrate. It's all about the champions and it's about the collaborators and it's all about the stakeholders. Remember, we had spoken about who the stakeholders are. Stakeholders are the people whom you impact. Stakeholders are the people who get impacted because of what you do. Stakeholders are the people who impact you for what you do, right? So it's important to keep on acknowledging the champions within them, the collaborators within them, brandish them as your collaborators because your sure way of sustaining and cementing the trust is what will come across, and that is what this hexave model talks all about. So influencing again links back, right? Is authority needed? From the hexave model that we have laid down, what is it that we are actually targeting and envisaging? What will drive sustenance will also come from the fact whether we have been able to do the right level of stakeholder identification. Have we mapped every stakeholder, and how are we going to manage the relationship with the stakeholder? I think that is an important drive in the influence that we will keep on getting into play. uh, what do we what do we instruct? Whom do we instruct? What instructions do we take from? Whom do we indoctrinate? Indoctrinate in the positive context, right? It is not um, about what is, let's say, indoctrination done by Hamas. So that is not the context here. If these two elements have come into play in linkage with what we have discussed so far, influencing is not behind. Converse is also true. No amount of influencing will be sustained. It will be just a lip service of one word against another word, and will always be prone to failures if the ABC and ABCD have not been undertaken, right? So that is an important element. Key questions that we will have to also ask would be about to what extent do we cooperate, to what extent do we compete, to what extent do we collaborate. And there is a whole science here, but we'll not be spending the time on it. Let's move to the next slide, please. The four, depending on the four ingredients to successful influencing, will always be around the 4 points that we are seeing here, right? It's about expectation management. The agenda and the outcome has to be very categorically defined and understood. If that is not in existence, things are going to fail and falter. No to say no. I think that is a very strong art in a science that we may want to think of. What is very, very critical and important, and we'll come about it into the next slide when we will come. So empathy versus sympathy dichotomy will always be there. So we'll just come to know to say no in a slightly greater detail. But empathy versus sympathy, right, is an important dichotomy. Now, this is again not a psychological dimension. This is not a philosophical dimension. It is not a philosophical masterclass. This is a very, very core, intense workforce management and drive that we are undertaking. And what happens for a WFM professional? They get um, so very obsessed with their my model, my assumption, my framework, my capacity plan, my schedule, my customer experience impact, my net promoter score, right? I think that my in itself uh, has a very thin fine line where possibly there is a need for a lot of sympathetic drive that needs to be clinically undertaken, right? So I think let's not be a victim to uh, the circumstances. What would be more important would be as an influencer, as a WFM leader, as a person who has laid down the right level of expectations with a clear intent of, we'll come to what it is in the next slide, but very clear intent of a success charter that we want to attain, will read lot many empathetic skills. Because while you need to learn how to say no and when to say no and what happens if I say no, right? It will be also an important element to how to manage the conflicts, because there will be conflict of priority, conflict of values, conflict of agenda, conflict of objectivity, conflict of measurement system, conflict of models, conflict of ideation, conflict of kingdoms, conflict of territories. I think there will be multitude dimensions that a WFM professional will have to undergo. And when I say territory and kingdoms, it is not about that Israel, Palestine, or Ukraine, Russia territories that we are talking of. It is going to be an intense one. My team, my operating model, my uh, incentive. I mean, there will be multitude of those mice that will come into play that needs to be dealt with by a WFM professional. And a WFM professional is strategically positioned, tactically positioned, at an operating level position. So whichever value stream one may want to look at it, upstream, downstream, middle stream, we all are absolutely very clear. Based on all the researches that we have seen, it is a point of inflection at which workforce management can remain workforce management, or can be whatever for management, right? And those elements are going to be critical. Conflicts have to be detected, conflicts have to be managed, conflicts have to be resolved. WFM professional, by leveraging data, information, facts, and unlocking the intellectual potential coming across, whether it is those generative AIs of the world, or through sheer mental models that when one brings into as part of the domain and determinant that we spoke about, or the disciplined approach that we spoke about, comes into play. So as we move to the next slide very quickly, there are objective, there is outcome, there is purpose, and most importantly, the identity. These four drivers are going to be the ABCs of influencing. So is there an aptitude to anticipate everything that we have spoken about? Is there an aptitude of us to be aware, right, of two classic traps? Are you accommodating or avoiding just for the sake of it, right? Because I want to protect my job, because I want to please others, because I want to ABCD. Am I accommodating or avoiding, right? Second is, are you compromising or are you competing? I think those are uh, two things. The moment you start detecting, immediately switch to the next gear. Can I collaborate? And always take recourse to the 4 points, right? Go back to go back to objective. What do I want to influence on? And look at it. If you were to go on to earlier Twitter, now X, you will find whenever people and celebrities, whenever they are trolled, they know how to take a reset back and how they want to immediately come on to the collaboration. So even if there was a statement that was made which has created furor, they would immediately go ahead, or they would get somebody of their followers to come across and pick up the drive. They will be focusing on what is the objective, what is the outcome, what is the purpose, and most importantly, what is the identity. For a WFM professional, the boardroom is not the end of the identity. The the mapping of stakeholders that we spoke about is a clear charter that one needs to look at. There are multiple studies that comes into play and should be followed to the T and to the core, so to say. Metamorphosis is science, is craft, is art, multiple ways that we need to look at it. What is going to drive the influencing for a WFM professional are going to be three broad parameters that will drive, and the way it will come across from a sustenance point of view or the emergence point of view will be the driver, which is reflected with the three broad competence, inherent DNA competence, which if we were to look at it, that is how civilization has evolved, mankind has evolved in last 52,000 years, right from 50,000 BC to today. I think the whole evolution has come across with that curiosity and empathy. If that was not the case, we would never have had built a wheel. And if the wheel was never built, we would never have been thinking of driving an electric vehicle today. And multitude of associated dimensions, right? Gears and everything that comes into play. Disruption is going to be order of the day. So automation, AI will be pervasive. We have seen what the buzzword generative AI has undertaken, and the way the frauds are getting constructed, right? So absolutely very clear on the dimension that one needs to think and look and link at. It will always be from my if at all there was one aspect that people would take away, I would say it's all about simplification and it's all about experience. The more you are able to keep on simplifying, because the pursuit of human being is to stay in their comfort zone, and whatever workforce management rules of engagement or scheduling rules or capacity rules, planning rules we may want to set up, whatever is the assumption management framework that is laid down, very clearly, the whole flow of work that we spoke about, flow of performance, flow of information, and most importantly, flow of people, right? The four broad domains in the workforce management, the more we are able to simplify and experience. And I know there are speakers in form of Jay Parekh and um, Narayanan, and I think Arvind Shukla. All of them will have some fantastic stories. Melissa is there. So I think all of them are going to be speaking significantly on various of the dimensions. Systems orientation, systems engineer. Our body is made up of 10 systems. Craft of systemic engineering comes from that system engineer, master system engineer called God, right? 10 systems in our body as we are speaking is as I am speaking is continuing to thrive, right? For common purpose of life, common mission of life, and it is absolutely seamless. When you making two systems talk to each other is the easiest thing to do. Anybody can do it. As you start expanding from three systems to four systems, I think that is where the complication happens. And uh, the next gen WFM professional, mark my words, take it in writing, uh, uh, I'll be very curiously, if I am still around, would be curious to see what happens in 2031 on the skill base of WFM engineers. And my sense is at least 25% of the workforce management professionals would be systems engineer who will be leading the the community and the function and the charter, so to say. So invest time on being a systems engineer, invest times on being a design thinker. uh, I think that is where I will want to look at it. Metamorphosis, change is the order, and every change will require influencing. Influencing has to come from within. WFM professionals have stayed across on huge reams of data. So by design, they become introvert, and obviously, uh, whatever they talk numbers, and whatever numbers they talk two numbers. And so it's important to build the whole linguistics, develop that articulation modeling approach on linguistics, and play with words as well, and see the beauty of number and words when they come and talk together. Remember the paper tiger part that we talked about, right? The numbers game tiger. How are they going to be redefined in times to come? Is going to be the order of the day, right? Who is going to be tigers of number game? It is going to be influencers, and who is the influencers? It is WFM professional. Choice is obsolescence versus relevance, invaluable versus obsolete, or most importantly, make a meaningful, purposeful, crafted difference to the organization through our WFM capability as an influencer. That's about it from my side, Dr. Shiva. Uh, Thank you so very much. I hand over the baton to all of you.
Thanks, Virit. It You talked about science and arts of influencer, very meticulous, and anyone who looks at this and understand this, should be able to create a great value to the organization and become an influencer. Learn to become an influencer, and create kind of the influential factor to the stakeholders, also to the CXOs, to the customers, and also to the board. There's a level that which we can create. Great. So we have some questions here.
So I did a great job in putting everybody to sleep, I hope.
Now, I think there's some problem with the system. When the question, I mean, chat box is.
You have a question? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Vineet, I know you've got a long tenure and have gone through a lot of changes over the years and have seen a lot of these things evolve in the industry. Uh, for me and for a lot of the team members that may be on the group chat here or the meeting, I would love to get some feedback on, how have you seen those main catalyst moments, from your career path, right? That has kind of gone through points of inflection, and what are some of those things would be there were your learnings that all of us can kind of learn and grow from.
Great question, Jay. I think if I was to take a step back on, if I was to restart my career, what are some of the things that I would do differently? I think I will use that as an anchor to respond to your question from an experience point of view. So what I would do differently, I would definitely invest a lot of time building and identifying who my stakeholders are. Right. I mean, earlier I used to invest a lot of time on my work, my model, my definition, uh, my boss who has given me the KRA. I think those were my start point of the career. Uh, I think I will spend today, if I was to restart again, or if I was to advise my younger self, my 20-year old Vineet, if I was to meet today and if I was to advise, I would say identify who your stakeholders are, invest a lot of time in terms of looking at the need, and the definition would again stem from what I told, right? My stakeholders are very oversimplified way people who are impacted by my work or people who are impacting my work. People who are are impacting me, or the people whom am I impacting, right? Not may not necessarily be by the direct sphere of work. So I think that one definition, identification, is what I would be undertaking. Second point that I would be undertaking would be focusing a lot on establishing collaboration and managing the conflicts. So conflict of priority, conflict of value. Conflict of value can be very, very simple, right? So for example, I really value great relationship with my uh, toddler or with my daughter, or uh, at the same point in time, I really value my job. Now, I have an important meeting to attend, and suddenly I realize that my daughter is sick. Both are value driven, right? So I value my daughter, I value my work, I have an important meeting to attend, I have to take my daughter to the doctor. How do I manage it, right? So I think that's a conflict of value that comes into play, and this is an oversimplified definition. So I think if I was to take a step back again and say, what is my definition of what exactly is my definition of an engaged, interlocked, uh, value-driven system? I think my whole input will get in terms of detection, identification of what are the point of vulnerabilities. Once when that point of vulnerability has been determined, I think how do I go and cement and find out alternatives are some of the pathways that comes across. Now, why these 2 points are important? So stakeholders and conflicts, if I was to look at it, are great harbinger of um, competence and magic that can get created. They they are going to have absolutely the same effect of what happens when a larva turns into a butterfly, right? It is going to be a painful process. What happens when uh, intense pressure for centuries is put on coal? I mean, obviously the outcome is a metamorphosis in form of diamond. So if I was to do a crystal ball gazing, very clearly this is something which will come out as a broad parameter. So I think those are my anchor points if I was to look at it on what would I advise my younger self. Coming on to, let us say, uh, uh, specifically answer on what would be the gain points, that if I was to look as an advisory from a WFM career standpoint, I think we get very hung up with our model to the extent there is a approach of winning an argument, or there is an approach of completely letting it go. Hey, he doesn't seem to understand, why should I be investing my energy? You do whatever you have to, right? Specifically when it comes to dealing with so-called position of authority that may come into play. So I think uh, please do not uh, accommodate or accept, right? I think that is the message that I will definitely want to give. Please do not, please do not, uh, just for the sake of it, compete. Please do not, for the sake of it, uh, just coordinate, right? Focus on setting up the right level of collaboration, even if that means going into a conflicting path. Remember, the larva that undergoes the pressure point will always turn into a beautiful, magical butterfly, colorful, magical butterfly. So I think that would be my uh, input, Jay. Great question. Very forceful point to reflect upon.
No,
That's very
definitely meaningful for me as well. And I hope others also got to consume a lot of it from that.
great. Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you.
Any questions from the audience? Now you can come onto the chat and type, or if any of you want to ask any questions, which is a one, like when announcement can we expect in WFM world due to AI, and how can we stay relevant in the ever evolving era? There's a question on that from Vish.
I wish so. If I understood the question, the the question was centered around how can we stay relevant in the ever evolving era. I think would that be the right summarization, Dr. Shiva?
That's right.
Okay, so I think we spoke about domain. That is the first and foremost way, by staying grounded onto domain. No influencing, and if we are not able to influence, then we are irrelevant, right? So no amount of influencing will be able to get initiated or get started if we don't have the domain knowledge and we don't have the competence in place. Shah Rukh Khan or a Sachin Tendulkar or a Roger Federer are very clearly the way the name comes across is only because of the work that they have performed at the crafted, skillful, excellent way that comes into play. Right? Good, bad, ugly, whether jury is not yet out, but maybe Narendra Modi may be most hated person or most liked person, depending on which side of the table you are. Reality is that nobody can deny the popularity that he commands, and without even being relative. I mean, to Modi, there are people who are going to draw the daggers either for or against it. So it's only because of the competence, right? People who do things that they do the best, and if they are not competent, if they are not uh, they have not built a stage of excellence, if I can use that word, they will never ever be able to stay relevant. Point number one. Point number two is ability to do the detection of the determinants, right? uh, the third point is with respect to the ability to simplify things. The most simplified way is to look at the linguistics, right? How do you think, if I was to ask that question, right? People think in whichever shape and form. Either you'll think in form of pictures or you'll think in form of words. There is no third way in which you will be able to think, right? Then comes the question: how do visually challenged who are also auditory impaired think, right? They also think in blocks of pictures and blocks of mental uh, words. So thinking is a domain which is what makes human being human. And if it's the quality of thoughts that determine what defines the stature for an individual. Once when the quality of thoughts have been put into play, how well have you executed on the thoughts is what comes across as the second charter. So linking it back to stay relevant, please build your domain. Please do the detection out on the determinants that are going to change the domain tomorrow. Please identify and upskill how you need to continue building your own charter, uh, and that charter has to stay aligned, right? End of the day, somebody else has to beyond yourself. I may continue saying I'm the I'm Albert Einstein of the world, right? Fact of the matter is, I can continue saying, do I have at least five more people who will be willing to say that, right? If that five is not there, then the interpersonal victory cannot come into play. So and obviously, if that each five of them get additional five to believe what uh, I firmly believe in, then the magic starts spreading across towards personal to interpersonal to public drive that comes into play or victory that comes into play. And if it has not moved into an interpersonal transitioning towards public, irrelevance is going to happen. I think that is the way to look at it. So we spoke about influence, we spoke about intuition. We did not spend much time, but remember that IN and the tuition. So the learning that comes across from intuition is the best tuition that can come into play. And most importantly, the surest way of staying relevant will always come from the fact where logic and intuition are intertwined together.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manith. I think very detailed answer that I'm sure that other speakers also can give this answer with their perspective. Very apt. Staying relevant is very important to be on the job and be in the business. And skilling and upskilling is constant learning is something very important. Very
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shiva, for having me. Thank you, Jay. Thank all the very best. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Really
Thank you.
appreciate your valuable time. And on behalf of GWFM, we express sincere gratitude for your valuable time and sharing your thoughts. Jay is another influential leader, as GWFM has done a lot of research. And Jay's insights have been always helpful and useful for the many WFM leaders and professionals. He's been a a speaker worldwide. Getting Jay in GWFM is really fortunate and privileged to listen to his speeches and insights. That he's going to talk about WFM thought leadership in the age of automation. I've not seen any forum or any of the organizations talking about WFM thought leadership. In fact, GWFM has been speaking since a long time, and like bringing thought leadership, bringing the kind of insights of relevance as a WFM influencer is something very important. We always talk about tactical. Still, we are talking about scheduling, RTA, forecasting, and planning. But I time for us to speak about WFM thought leadership as we are in automation world and changing the times, and business is changing and technology is getting advanced, and the industries are changing. Very important for WFM leaders and who are going to be leaders to learn and understand and also adopt how the WFM thought leadership is. This is not that just pick up something and use it. There is a science and art to it. Today, Jay is going to talk about the insights of WFM thought leadership. Jay is a senior vice president, workforce management from Result CX. He works out of US, keeps traveling worldwide. Result CX is growing rapidly, acquiring a lot of companies worldwide. Jay has been an influencer within the organization and also outside. Great to have you, Jay, with us. With us, we invite you to present the theme of WFM thought leadership in the age of automation.
Thanks, Dr.
Participants, feel free to ask questions, write your questions in the chat box. Over to you, Jay.
Let me share my screen and we'll get going.
Yes, Jay.
All right. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share some of the thought process and some of the research and trends that I've kind of been tracking over the last few years. I've compiled some information for you guys. It goes very much hand in glove into what Vineet was talking about, and I think a lot of what all of us do as a WFM practice participants within our own respective organization is evolving. I think the world kind of went about being forced into change when the COVID started, right? But I think that it also triggered, right, with all the negativity and pain points that it brought along in personal life, professional lives. It has also brought along a lot of innovation in the industry, right? Working remotely, working in a hybrid environment. A lot of companies, they were not doing it, where everybody was kind of forced into having to react to something, right? Similarly, right, automation is not anything new. Probably been going on for a good bit of 10, 15, 20 years, right? I think the pace of automation to what we do has accelerated now, especially with the introduction of generative AI and its version iterations that it's going through, right? And it's going to be continuously evolving process. The key becomes, how do we adopt that in our respective ecosystems to whatever different levels of scale it might fall under, right? So my hope is, through my presentation today, that I share some trends and kind of what's to come, right? I think, as Vineet may have mentioned during his presentation, that a lot of things are going to change over the next 5 to 7 years, right? Doesn't necessarily mean they'll change in 2030, but it will continue to change, right? Some catalysts may change earlier than the others. Some catalysts may come along in the journey a little bit later. What I wanted to kind of focus on was, starting with a lot of the technology trends from 2022, right? What I'm showcasing right now is the trends that were shared by Gartner. through a lot of their publications and reporting, right? So it's a lot, all of this information that I'm sharing is available publicly, right? So it's not anything proprietary, but I do want to share where I'm collecting the information and some of the sources that I normally kind of go to kind of pick up business intelligence, what's happening in the market, right? Which is always uh, good to have your pulse on. So, as you guys can see, right, the generative AI was a thing even in 2022, right? It was picking up a good bit of speed. AI has been around for a minute. I think pretty much, most of the houses in the US have some type of AI type of device, right? We just don't realize it, right? Even, Amazon Alexa or Google's AI bot, right? So the home helpers, right? A lot of those things are some form of artificial intelligence that is designed, developed, and continues to cultivate by human efforts on the back end, right? I know to generate some of that artificial intelligence, there are thousands and thousands of people working in captive environment, and in many cases in our own outsourcing industries that could support some of those things. The paradigm shifts that happen in the technology innovation and will continue to happen is going to be ever evolving process, right? It is going to accelerate. I think one of the big things that I would call out is, as in our respective ecosystems, as you are looking at it, one level of technology deployment, technology development, technology onboarding that's being done within your organizations will be always be relevant to what is your cost to own the practice, to what is the cost to service, right? Cost to own essentially is what is the cost to the organization or cost to oneself, and what is the cost to service is essentially what you are billing your supplier or a vendor or a customer, right? There needs to be a balance of the two, and that will always come into play. And as we are selecting different tools, technology, automation engines, any number of things that comes through from a technology trends perspective, right? One of the things that I always fall caution to is the generative AI is a big craze, right? It's become a buzzword, right? And so as the automation will continue to evolve, but having an automation without intelligence is, just spewing out garbage that it consumes, right? And that's been an old saying, right? Garbage in, garbage out, right? It's not anything new. It's been like that for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, right? So that's not anything new from a trend standpoint, and that's going to continue to evolve, right? I think generative AI uh, has collected so much data over, I think it's current up to for paid services for 2022, start of 2022, and the freeware is through 2021, right? But it's a compilation of so much information, but if one doesn't know what to consume out of it and how to ask the right question, you're not going to get the right meaningful outputs out of it. So wanted to call some of those things out. I think at start of 2023, all of the organizations in some form and shape were going through some level of digital journey planning or execution or somewhere along the path over the last couple of years that most organizations have been in. And I expect that process will continue. Again, some organizations will be leaders, some organizations will be following suit as they continue to evolve and learn in their respective ecosystems for whatever right reason that's meaningful for them, right? I don't think there is a silver bullet that says, well, if you don't do it by this date, you're going to fall behind, right? There was that chaos during year 2000 conversion, right? The Y2K chaos that had happened for people that have gone around. Don't want to carbon date myself, but that's been around long enough. We have seen some level of chaos, right? And that innovation continues, right? Do you look at Nokia, for example, right? Was a market leader, and at some point it just kind of veered away and didn't innovate enough and didn't strategize enough and got cycled out, right? Same thing with Yahoo, for example, right? There was a lot of market value for the Yahoo, but ended up being sold for a lot less than it was once worth at its peak. getting in and getting the flow in the workflow of transformation, getting it at the right time is critical, but that right time is always going to be relevant to your organizations, right? So don't really rush to that. I have to get this done tomorrow. Just make sure you're on a journey of some type, right? That's relevant to your organization. Some of the additional trends, right? You look at a few different reports, right, sharing the same information, right? If you look at the contact center industry and the software market over next, that 10-year period that it's showcasing from what it was in 2020 to what it's expected to 2030, you see there is a significant increase that it's going to continue to evolve to, right? 20 some odd percent is no small feat, right? If you look at this in APAC region, pretty much all the regions are going to be relevant, right? APAC region probably leads at a more accelerated pace that you will see in coming slides, but nonetheless, right, it's happening. It is going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to evolve, right? From a how you do your ACD and automation in ACD, even while a lot of the outbound dialing and cold calling has subsided through a lot of government restrictions, it's still there. There is innovation there. There is enough volume there in the business that that is going to continue to grow as a market share, as a individual work stream. So just to name a few, right? And I'll share this across with you, Shiva, right? So it's available for the team to consume. Who are your players, right? I think, you come across so many different types of software suites, so many providers, right? It is a plethora of players in this industry, right? Who do you use that's relevant for your ecosystem? And that will play the key in what you're looking to accomplish, right? As far as the automation goes, as far as the business intelligence goes, picking the right tool set that is interconnected to various different tools that you might have in your ecosystem. Any number of these, top players can do the job, right? Depending on size and scale and complexity of your organization. Something small, something new will also suffice, right? Again, look for things that fit in really well for your organizational ecosystem and where you guys are trying to get to over next 3 to 5 years, right? Don't look for the problem you're trying to solve for now. Look for what is the problem and what is that going to evolve to over next 2 to 3 years or 5 years, and trying to solve predict and solve a problem that that will be sustaining for next several years, right? Not just for a short-term period. Looking at AI, right? Generative AI, like I shared, it's a big buzzword, and it is going to continue to accelerate, right? Even far more accelerant than a software suite that I was sharing earlier, right? From looking at from 2020 to looking at 2030, from US market to Asia Pacific market, you see even more accelerated growth that is going to happen, right? All of these things are telling us that market is going to keep evolving, right? As a byproduct, it becomes critical how we apply a lot of these generative AI, right? And I've shared across, again, from one of the Pixiplex reports, right? How they're being utilized in a lot of different industries, right? Where you see some check marks, some of the industries don't have those check marks. It's not that they're not going to be evolving into it. It's just a matter of time and prioritization of where they're trying to get to. Again, all of our customers, if you're in an outsourcing environment, if you're in a captive environment, it is going to continue to evolve, continue to get embedded, right? From a customer-facing environment to how you use it within your workforce practices. Just be mindfully understanding of that impact is going to come through, right? And you want to get ahead of the curve, educating the team, right? The more data intelligence that you have access to, the availability of the data, the big data analytics, the having a data warehouses, all those things will become a table stakes, right? Then the differentiator becomes what, right? A lot of the look at the product lines, right? A lot of the cell phone technologies, you look at the differentiator becomes how you serve your customer, how you take care of your customer experience, how you take care of the intelligence that you can collect from the data, and how you can apply it in a meaningful, actionable, insightful way, right? I think that's going to be the big differentiator that as a practice owners, practice participants, practice leaders, change managers, right? All the influencers that even Vinit was talking about, right? Then the influencing happens from all levels, right? It's not just coming from one. So all that is relevant. Just keep consuming, right? Keep consuming and figuring out how you keep evolving your process, and keep the process ever learning, right? Ever evolving. How do you keep deploying, right? And don't be set in what, again, going back to what Vineet was sharing, right? Don't be stuck in what is the me of your solution that is solving the problem. Keep evolving to your stakeholders, to your customers, to your customer experience, which is what's going to give you a larger line of sight as you go into 2024 and many more years to come. If I were to kind of look at what is the primary focus point, right? Your customer experience, your stakeholder engagement, those are going to be your critical drivers and differentiators. Your spectrum of influence, I think, again, a lot of what Vineet was talking about is relevant, right? So that's why I was saying that, I really appreciated the context, diligence Vineet provided in the information sharing, the mindfulness of what is going to be a really impactful practice if you adapt to it the right way. Will allow you and your organization to go a long distance. Looking at spectrum of influence, right? I think, again, some of this we need to have talked about, right? When I look at spectrum of influence, right, starts at your executive team, your technology team, your capacity, your training, your client engagement, client engineering, your HR, your talent acquisition, your sales team, all of these functions that all WFM practitioners intersect within your day-to-day life at some point, right? Depending what level you are working through, these points of influence, these points of engagement are there in your ecosystem, right? If they're not, then they should be, right? I think that would be one of the opportunity areas. If you don't have any of these things checked in your box, that me as a WFM practitioner, am I engaged with the HR? Am I engaged with talent acquisition? Am I engaged with the training? Am I engaged with the technology, right? And, not just at a high level, but in a more meaningful way. One of the things that gets called out within our organization is tech and gear, right? I think tech and gear is a very critical part of onboarding, right? Which then leads back to a connecting to HR and talent acquisition, right? So everything is interconnected in our ecosystem. And if somewhere along the way you are not connected, I would highly recommend that you do get some level of engagement and connection into this work streams within your organization, right? And this doesn't really document every single one of them, so it's not limited to this, but it should be at least these. Going back to, a lot of what Vineet was talking about, right? In age of automation, how do you influence, how do you engage will drive the change forward in your organization. For those who are kind of keeping to what is my way of doing, will not get to play in what is going to be market trends and what is the market bears in 2025 to 2027 to 2030. It is going to continue to change. So, be respectful for the change, be accepting of the change, right? The chair, the quote that I put in here from David is very resonating to what I go through day to day, right? And I take a moment of pause and I kind of figure out, right, are things going the way that I had planned for them to go, right? And if they are not, what is it that I should do differently? Some portions you will learn, some portions you won't, right? Some of that comes through, some of what I'm learning is some of your personality is either you want it to change or you don't want it to change, but it is going to, the change in the industry is going to impact what you do day in and day out. With that, Dr. Kumar, I will give it back to you, sir. If there is any call out or questions, happy to address them. And again, huge thank you to Vineet for providing a lot of meaningful content. It was definitely useful for me. And, even when we had talked before the GWFM conference, I was super excited to listen to his feedback. So I really, really appreciated that.
Thanks, Jay. That was a fantabulous coverage of thought leadership in WFM. I really liked about last slide that you talked about. Jay, if you could just flip back the last just previous slide. No, before that, there's one. Yeah, this is something that not seen that anyone like talking about it. This is something very practical, where we deal with all these stakeholders on day-to-day basis. The creating influential factor is something very important here. And the art and science of bringing that influential factor is something very important. So I'm sure that the audience would have got great benefit. Now I invite Narayan. Yes, Narayan is here.
Yeah. Good
Hi,
evening,
Narayan.
Siva. Hi, Vineet. Nice to see you, Vineet. Long time.
Wonderful. Good evening again. We have
Okay, fine.
we
Okay.
have Narayanan. Narayanan V is Senior Vice President Resource Management at Omega Healthcare. So Narayan brings in a lot of experience in terms of technology and functional and also GWFM perspective. He's going to talk about how resource management has evolved and the shift in paradigm shift in resource management and transformation from cost center to delivery come revenue stream. So something very important. Like we should talk more about revenue when we speak to the business leaders, right? And numbers. That's when they start liking us. We talked about influential factors. Now Narayan is going to talk about a very important aspects of in his keynote is paradigm shift in mindset. This is really very relevant topic for all of us to learn and listen to. Feel free to ask questions to Narayan. Narayan, great to have you with us today, and looking forward for your insight. Over to you.
Thank you, Siva. Thank you so much for the quick introduction as well. So good evening, everyone again. And I was about to share these thoughts in the last global meet at Bangalore. Due to time crunch, we couldn't do that. And thanks to Shiva for this arrangement once again. So basically, first of all, I don't believe slides, first of all. Basically, this is a high time of interactions with every one of you. So I'm not bringing any slides here. And I hope most of the guys who are just watching and who are listening are well-matured leaders. So whatever I just thinking, whatever I just experiencing in last 20-25 years in this industry, I thought of sharing with you. To quote some of my experience 15 to 20 years back, when myself and Vineet were together in some BPO company, that time the thought process was completely different. The expectation from delivery, the expectation from management, everything was completely different. But now the expectation and your overall final output from the workforce management or resource management, whatever you call it, is completely different now. In fact, I would like to quote some of the thoughts which articulated by Sanjeev Jain. I still remember his thoughts when he addressed the entire crowd during the Bangalore meet. He's a global operations head from Wipro, and he was just spoken for just 20 minutes. So I would like to take a thread from his speech as well. So what happened, that guy was very clear. He is a ops guy. So what he was consistently trying to send a message to the entire workforce management team, that boss, you guys are doing an amazing job, no more second thought. And you guys are keep on changing yourself, keep on updating yourself, no more second thought. But end of the day, the customer, either the delivery or business, how you are taking the output from the resource management or workforce management in a positive way. That's very important. Over a period of time, they are getting into the feel or perception that, oh, these guys are extremely good in capacity planning. These guys are extremely good in real-time monitoring. These guys are very good in scheduling. All are fundamentals and they are doing a great job. Okay, how long we are going to be in the same platform? And we have to go to the next level. So my predominant thought process of this session is not to talk about what we are doing, how we are doing. Any model or any business or any products, there are some high level we have to think. Number one, why we are doing. Number two, what we are doing. Number three, how we are doing. Most of the time, we are always discussing about how we are doing and what we are doing. Everybody knows that what we are doing and how we are doing, that's what matters. When we are talking about how we are doing, we are talking about, can I implement AI? Can I implement multiple tools? Can I implement so many things? Yes, everything is very, very nice. Depends on the scenario, depends on the competitive world. We can leverage the strength of all upcoming changes in the marketing scenario. We can apply to our stream and start tweaking our process. No more second thought. But the fundamental question, the other side of the table, people are thinking that why we are doing. We have to somewhere we have to make a stop and think towards that line, why we are doing. So when I keep on thinking about this particular concept, we have to be very clear. So nowadays, fortunately, I'm getting a frequent chance to go and listen to the board of directors' expectation, understand the business leaders' expectation from the overall company's high-level 5 years roadmap, 10 years roadmap, how they are planning to leverage the technology. All things I have an opportunity to learn. When I'm listening to all these kind of expectation, one line, consistently I'm getting a message from this entire interactions. What I'm telling that, boss, over a period of time, they are all trying to maintain your profitability, which is what the final juice of any organization. You cannot avoid that. Whether you like it or don't like it, that is the final output. So when the revenue is going in an upward trend and everybody wants to sustain the profitability also, how we are going to sustain the profitability? I understand that any BPO industry, in some of the IT industry, the majority of the cost is coming from human capital. 40 to 55% of the cost is coming from the human capital. So the first attack is the first axe coming to the human capital cost. How we can improve the efficiency, how we can enhance the productivity. This is what they keep on pushing. All are fine. But over a period of time, the leadership team, what they are thinking that, oh, great. So what is always the workforce management, the resource management cost is coming and sitting in the SG&A. So how they are thinking, oh, this is like a 2% of the revenue or 1% of the revenue or 3% of the revenue, because it depends on the size of the organization. That's what they're looking at. But at the same time, every leaders understand, every leaders know that this team is providing a phenomenal value to the system, phenomenal value to the delivery. Without that, we cannot make the delivery. That everybody knows, but still, they're still thinking that we are the enablers. So somewhere we have to create a perception or create a feel among the leadership that, boss, we have been doing this job for so many years. I understand your expectation. Let us try to make it simple. Okay, we don't want to complicate the process. So most of the time, when my team are coming and presenting the capacity planning or whatever our regular Excel PPTs to the senior management, nobody has a time to listen. Nobody has a patience to listen. 100% the people who are listening to this session, touch your heart and tell me, that whenever you are, after making a lot of efforts, go and sitting in front of the delivery guys and presenting your numbers, presenting your whatever, your thought process or your inter-planning table or your roadmap, your capacity planning, the final question they will ask is, all fine, boss. I understand all your PPTs, understand all your graphs, all fine. Can you meet my expectation? Can you meet my goal? That's what they want to know. So that is the kind of, because they're not bothered about how we are doing. They know that what we are doing. But at the end of the day, they're trying to understand what is the value you are bringing to the table. That's what they're more expecting. So that's what I'm just suggesting here. What I'm just thinking that it's not going to happen overnight. I completely agree that. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to start thinking and we have to start tweaking our thought process in this line. Otherwise, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, we will keep on doing this thankless job. Somewhere we have to make some changes in your gears and start creating a field in the overall dynamic of the business that without this team, without resource management, the company cannot move. How we are going to do that? So I am just sharing this thought process that getting into the stream of making simplify all the processes, whether you can apply AI, whether you can apply your whatever technology you guess in. I'm not disputing anything that. But one example I can tell you. When one of the guy used to present the capacity planning to one of the senior leader, so this is my required capacity, this is my breakup of buffer, shrinkage, ramp up, glide path, this side, that path, all this in presenting. And the senior guy is from the high-level leadership team. He doesn't know anything about workforce management. But he is a board of director, almost a chairman of the board. And that guy doesn't know anything about the points what we are articulating. But that guy has given 20 minutes opportunity to the resource management guy to talk about what he's doing in the company. That's a great opportunity has given because he's believing that this guy is bringing a value. But this guy started providing all these inputs by way of these Excel numbers. That guy doesn't have the patience. What is the final statement is made? All of us, I'm sorry, I don't understand whatever you're just talking. Okay, what is the final juice we are going to bring into the table? Can I meet 25% EBITDA on a sustainable manner? Can I reduce my human capital cost in next 10% in next 3 months down the line? Or can I get something else, the regular stream of the business? So that is the kind of expectation. So why I'm just thinking that, number one, let us simplify the process. Very, very simplify the process so that it will be very easy for you guys to go and present in a very quick, crisp manner and impress the people who are sitting against you, number one. And number two, somewhere you have to think that the capacity planning, the workforce management is only on the human capital. Don't think that. Even the last year session, I was trying to explain to the same team. Somewhere you have to work with all of the team. For example, entire IT infra, the entire procurement team, everywhere the planning is required. Without planning, nobody can do that. But how things are happening? Some procurement head is doing some planning and he is predicting something and he's doing his job. And same of IT infra team in terms of servers, in terms of systems and blah, blah things, he is doing some planning and he is doing some activity. In any department, they are doing some planning, they are doing activity. Somewhere you have to get into and increase your radar and get the entire planning piece of every function. I'm telling you, that's the way you have to, like an octopus, and take all the planning piece of all the organization. So finally, any planning happening in this company, it should be done by resource management. Whether it is infra planning, whether it is IT planning, whether it is whatever planning happening in this company should be done by the workforce management team or resource management. That's the one way of consolidating the entire planning piece under one umbrella, number one. And number two, somewhere we have to start selling our values to the customers. Start sitting with the delivery team so that the customer will try to understand what we are doing. Today, I could see most of our teams are doing multiple analytics, multiple MAS reports. These are the MAS and these are the analytics only. The delivery team is using in their PPT. You know that everybody will accept this. WFM team and the MAS team only used to provide all the data points to the delivery, and they will take our juice and put it in their bottle and go and present to the management. And they are getting recognized 100%. And how best and how long you guys are getting the equal recognition, we don't know. So I'm not discouraging anyone here. So somewhere you have to create a feel with the leadership team that, boss, will work in a collaborative mode. Most of the time, the leadership team has a feel that, oh, this guy is coming and exposing my weakness. This guy is showing the mirror that I have fat. So he's trying to expose me. This guy is coming and he's helping me, no doubt about it. But at the same time, he's trying to expose me. That kind of feel is still there. I know that 10 years back, 15 years back, it was very, very high, but now it is coming down. But over a period of time, you have to work with the delivery team or work with the business in a very collaborative way and create a very strong feel that, boss, I'm with you. I'm working with you shoulder to shoulder. We both can go and win the customer's heart. I think that is the kind of confidence you have to build. The moment if you are going to create that feel with the delivery, I'm telling you, whenever he is going to meet the customer, he will take you along with you. The moment you are going to along with the delivery team to the customer, I am telling you, the customer will start listening to you. The moment customer started listening to you, you will be able to articulate what you are doing and why you are doing and how you are doing, and start billing your services. Most of the time, the billing methodology, what we are doing is it is everything club. So whether FTE rate or transaction, that's what the billing. Somewhere we have to start presenting that the WFM is also a very valuable service which has to be built separately or which has to be built along with the service. I think that is the kind of a concept we have to create. Fortunately, I did in some of my previous companies, and which customer is acknowledged. Oh, I have a very, what can I say, monotonous team sitting in the United States, and they are doing so many multiple activities. I'm spending huge money. Just like an example, I'm just sharing. So moment we started sharing the values of all these things, we can remove the duplication, we can remove all the data crunching work, and we will be able to provide everything as against your expectation on the tailor-made basis, understanding your expectation. I am getting your weekly call, taking your expectation and creating the roadmap. Customers are very happy. So they started interacting with us. So over a period of time, the delivery team and the WFM team, they're working together, are creating a very phenomenal value stream and the good solutioning they are doing. Most of the time now, what BPO industry is doing, they are providing a service along with the technology. Previously, they are just providing services. Now, any service you can take care, they will add with technology. Moment they added the technology, the pricing is going up, the entire value proposition is going up. So that's what these things are happening, because technology is a buzzword. That's what everybody's using. I'm not denying it. But at the same time, how many people, how many leaders, they are giving the same importance to this resource management function and workforce management function. Somewhere, if we are not able to create that difference, nobody can do that. So this is the time has come to revisit our thought process and start working with the delivery and simplify the process and think that how we are going to give more values, how we are going to move the mindset of the business or any leader that this is not a cost center. This is also going to become a revenue center. This is also going to become a delivery center. I think that is the kind of transformational process we have to kick off. I'm not telling that just because we are talking today and next 1 week onwards, everything will change. Nothing is going to happen. But unless otherwise, we are going to kick off this thought process, things will not move. So that is one of the fundamental thoughts I would like to share with all the upcoming leaders or already they're becoming strong leaders who are sitting in front of me. I'm requesting everyone to think in this line. This is very, very important. So that's the main thought of point I would like to share with everyone. That's all I'd like to share, Shiva. If any questions, anybody has any view, I'm happy to. But anybody has any different thought also, you have every right to contradict with me, which also I'm happy to listen.
Thanks, Rohit. Very important aspects that you talked about, very relevant. And I myself have seen that WFM leaders, WFM folks talk about only what is that they've been doing and all, except the fact that, what is really required. Very, very informative keynote, very thoughtful, and this is need for the hour. Jay and Vinny talked about the influential factor and thought leadership. You talked about, the revenue perspective and the mind shift and paradigm shift in a mindset is something very important. The approach that you talked about, right approach towards. Amazing one. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, so yeah, there's one question here asking that, and how do you start this as a manager, as a WFM manager, where I have a small team, and how do I really start with the stakeholder to do this?
So you are an upcoming leader. So you are working as a manager and you know your scope and you know limitations. Forget about what your boss is telling, what your scope of the work, don't worry about that. End of the day, everybody is working for the common objective of the organization. So go and try to meet your customer, whether it's an end customer or a delivery, that's one of your customer. Go and sit with him and have an open discussion with the customer. That's a very important. The expectation setting is very clear. There is no hard and fast rule that expectation setting should only come from delivery to WFM. There is vice versa also. Okay, so better you can go and interact with the delivery guy or business leader, whoever else, I'm not very sure about it. Go and understand and have an open chat and list out all the expectations. What are your expectations? I'm telling you. Then you can create your practices, create your process and start doing it. Yes, definitely any company, they'll have a well-defined, well-determined SOP, well-defined processes, all are fine. But how we are going to apply the process, how we are going to apply everything and how we are going to project and positioning, that's what very important. So my only humble suggestion to you that go and discuss with your customer, whoever else, and understand his expectation, open conversation, then create your roadmap accordingly and start providing the output. I am telling you, he will be in his place and he will not survive without you. That's the kind of confidence you can build. That's the only input I can give.
Do you think this is a future of leadership skill, one of the competencies required for any of the WFM leaders?
I'm not saying this is very much, this is definitely one of the leadership, leadership skill, because I know that most of the leaders at WFM are phenomenal in terms of their day-to-day stuff, because I'm consistently seeing their transformation in every aspect. They are doing a phenomenal, outstanding performance, no more second thought. But at the end of the day, That's what I'm quoting the Sanjeev Jain's statement during our Bangalore meet. You put it very bluntly. You guys are doing an amazing job, but try to think something differently. Even I was thinking the same line. That's what I'm telling. This quality of thought process is definitely required. How we are going to add it in your cap as a feather, I leave it to you, because I don't know your ground. I don't know your customer, but somewhere depends on your dynamics, depends on your environment. Somewhere you have to add this thought process in your cap. Otherwise, over a period of time, how long you are going to sit in the cost center? That's a fundamental question I'm asking. The guy who was sitting opposite your table, he should understand why you are doing and what value you are bringing to the table. Because over a period of time, how and what will get into some statutory level, the dust will settle somewhere. Somewhere you have to bring the why concept. That's what I'm telling. This is definitely required. When this is $1 million question, which I leave it to the team who are sitting, and based on their ground reality, based on their dynamics, they can choose the right battle to add this cap, Shiva.
Thanks, Narayan. Very practical and very insightful, Narayan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shiva. Thanks for the opportunity.
Your time out, and let me see if there are any questions. There are no questions now. So, what's your last point? I mean, share some insights at what is the WFM folks should do differently. I mean, you mentioned it. Maybe if you want to share it, maybe a few points that.
I think I covered everything, Shiva.
Okay.
I think I covered everything, and moreover, I am just getting delayed because I have question 6:30.
Okay.
So almost 10 minutes delay for one of my customer call. That is,
right.
End of the day, we have to go with our ground reality. We cannot escape from that. I need to jump into the call. But thanks for the opportunity,
So,
Shiva.
thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Wish you all the best. Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate
all
your
the best.
valuable presence.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Narayan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looking forward to a great session from Arvind.
Thanks, Puneet.
Before that, can we have something we'll just take a minute to get his slide. So, do you have any insights from Narayan's speech to share some insights?
No, I think as Narayan said, he had brought out the key context. I mean, I think if I was to put it slightly more provocatively, just one context that I may want to build. It's not about subservience, and it is not about subservient mastery in the engagement, interlock, and relationship that comes across as part of a thought process. It's about money. It's about revenue. I think that message got communicated very clearly. But about the working relationship of delivery and workforce management that came across, I don't want anybody to leave the call with an impression that there is any advocacy of subservience mastery that is coming out between delivery and workforce management. So I think it's about the nature of occupation that each one is involved into, right? So suppose tomorrow if a cardiologist, cardiosurgeon becomes very, very bored because he has been operating on heart only for last, let's say, 15 years. Should we entrust the cardiosurgeon to perform surgery on brain? Could be a disaster of various kinds waiting to happen. So I think just on a lighter note, that is just a context over and above what Narayan shared.
Thanks, Raj. I appreciate that. Great. So great to have Arvind.
Yeah. I think a quick intro about me. I manage global workforce at Sagility. I think one of the questions came from the group as a part of Global Workforce Forum, that before any presenter come, it's important to talk a little bit about the organization. And since we went through divestiture almost 3 years back from HGS. So it used to be HGS Healthcare almost 2 years back. Bearing Capital acquired us for almost $1 billion plus. And we renamed ourselves as Sagility almost a year back. So we just completed 1 year with the name of Sagility. It's close to 35,000 organization, and primarily we focus on healthcare. We are a little more than $1 billion company, a little more than $500 million company. And we are on the path of $1 billion in next couple of years. So that's about Sagility. I know a lot of leaders talk about technology tools, a couple of weeks back when we had forum, and today as well, that how AI is going to transform the way we are kind of operating, chat, GPT, etc. But what, as a leader, I believe in, while technology has its own space, people play again a critical role. There are tools, but there's something called a process and a quality that bring all these pieces together. So if you really have to make best use of all the three, it's important to have that level of process governed by these three pieces governed by process and governance. So that's all about today. I'm going to talk about improve and innovate process and workforce, a little bit about quality. So we can kind of go over 2 slides, Shiva, quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Arvind, for taking your time out to share your insights. Thanks for your introduction, and thanks for introducing. Talked about your company. People are yet to learn and understand about Sagility, great company,
Sure.
and you're playing a global role as a WFM leader. It's a phenomenal job that you're doing with a large team. Great job. So great to have you with us today. Can share my screen.
So we're going to just talk about quality. Quality in the workforce, if I really look at, according to me, it is the way I believe it. It's a constant delivery of efficient and effective workforce practices. If we really focus on, a lot of times we talk about process designing, workflow, and all that. It really helps us eliminate redundancies, help us optimize cost, and help us driving better results, and at the same time improve customer experience. Now it has 2 parts. The way I look at it, quality assurance and quality control. The quality assurance is more about preventing defects and ensuring proactive planning and process implementation. Quality control is more about identifying and correcting defects, basically taking an approach that will reduce your defect or help you kind of, keeping a check on the process. Now, if I look at QA is more of a standard, setting a standard process, preventing defects. QC is more about product and services that meet those standards. So that's basically more of a correlation. We can quickly move to agenda. Now, I'm going to cover a little bit about a slide on quality, and then we're going to talk about maturity model, quality consciousness, and the area of implementation, and then a quick summary on that. So we can quickly move to the next slide. Now, if I look at Aristotle, what he called is quality is not an act, it's more of a habit. Now, it's the way I look at it, it's more of a mindset. It's a commitment to excellence that we kind of look at. Looking at every aspect of workforce, how do we kind of bring that excellence? It could be a basic example if you look at when you go and buy a leather bag, okay? You can have a fine leather, but in case if the buckle is shoddy, it's not a high quality, the entire look of the bag really, the sheen of the bag really goes off. And it can apply to anything when it comes to quality. Now, it's more of a continuous improvement when it comes to quality, and just to make sure that we focus on customer satisfaction, addressing areas of improvement, and at the same time taking a data decision approach. So that's a little bit about quality. We can move to, and there's a kind of she will just go back to the slide. There's a word cloud that I have put there. It talks about data-driven approach, talks about engagement, it talks about decision-making, customer satisfaction. So we kind of, if you look at word, it has a meaning related to quality, commitment to excellence, customer satisfaction. So again, a mindset, continuously process improvement, all that. Now we can go to the next slide. Now, this is a maturity model that basically I I borrowed from Shiva. And this is something he has built, and I kind of liked it, so I put it on the slide. I will have also Shiva kind of touch on some of these pointers. So when we talk about surviving, and we typically talk about traditional organization, it's basically not having workforce process and going back to say when we started BPO almost like 80s, when we were just trying to put all the things together. It was pretty at a instance stage. There was no process, no technology. We were kind of trying to work everything on Excel. And a lot of time I talk about some of these things in previous discussions and forums. I spoke about that. It was difficult to get a line of sight of demand. So there was always a gap. You either land up carrying excess capacity or higher capacity or lower capacity. The decision what you used to take is without data. So it's a lot of gut that used to take your decision. And then obviously, since there is no common approach, so partnering, collaborating with cross-functional team used to also, there's a lot of people used to lack within them. So no alignment, I would say, between cross-functional team, which lead to certain times not so good decision making, and which has a financial impact, customer escalations and all that. So that was the first stage of where we started the journey as a surviving or a traditional organization. Then comes a dual speed organization, which is like changing as the time progressed. We started changing. We started redefining the process. We started building a database. But then again, there was a limitation with the technology. The technology was not evolved, and I would still talk about like early 90s, mid 80s, where we were still trying to figure out the best technology for the call center. And because of lack of these technology data, we were not able to take end-to-end decision. There was escalations from customers. There's a lot of dependency on people. And so if you have to do kind of the way we kind of leverage RP, etc., we used to, for mundane tasks or regular tasks, we used to have multiple people doing the same stuff. And then came, scale, agility, which is more defined, standardized, and automated organization, where partial automated organization, we have defined the processes, we have visibility to data to an extent, but we started leveraging technology. But then the risk was, again, it was not kind of stitched end to end from an all process, people process technology perspective. So there was still risk and revenue leakages that we used to carry always. The third stage, which is more of like 2000, mid 2000 is when, and why I'm adding data is because with my experience, that's how I've seen the industry evolving year over year. Where we had analytics, we have deep analytics, people are able to take decision, we were able to draw a lot of correlation, there are a lot of tools and technology, organizations pretty well structured, their process, documentation. So leadership were able to take effective decision making. They were able to make, and there were dashboards and data in place. So we were able to optimize workforce. There were good decision making made basis data. So that's a stage where we'll say thrive. The organization started thriving, but then you say outperform. Where some organizations we are still kind of, there are organizations are still kind of shaping up. They're still trying to get there, which is like fully automated process. All the cross-functional team are tightly knitted. If you're hiring, your finance team is aware, your HR team is aware, L&D is acting, the hiring engine is cranking, L&D is up to speed, your sales team is giving you sales pipeline well in advance, and then you're proactively planning all that. So all that basically driven by technology, and all the teams are kind of working closely. And then also as a workforce leader, certain times we are also talking about revenue sharing model. Okay, we want to help you doing this. We'll share this revenue. So that's basically where we get to outperform organization. So I'll pause here and I'll let Shiva add on this.
Thanks, Arvind, for touching upon this quality and the maturity model. This is very close to my heart. A lot of research still going. Currently, if you look at, there are no benchmarking tool or benchmarking certificates available in the market in the WFM area. So we brought in from GWFM that this is a model that in a ABCDE, where we understand that where organization stands. It could be E, T, or anywhere. So approach is to understand how you can really create value. You can be in any stage that you are in, but always try to be at the level A. That's where you outperform and optimize, and also create value to the table, value to the organization, and you'll be able to create a lot of value overall, where investors will be able to see, and stakeholders will be able to see, your clients, and overall globally will be able to elevate. GWFM is bringing this model and help organizations to get into the process, strategy, tools and technologies together to understand that where do you stand, and we'll be able to help you know how you can really grow exponentially. Most of us try doing, yes, we have our own best practices. I don't think anyone is following. In fact, one of the companies that where I worked earlier, they were thinking that one of the best processes, best tools and technologies and strategies that we have. When I started researching, that's when I understood that they're just following 15% of the best practices in the market. Every one of us think that yes, we are already doing great or maybe not great, but here is the benchmarking tool and measurable scale that will be able to help you with where you stand and how you can really grow. This model can help us to scale in terms of business and supporting the business to grow their revenue, optimize the cost, create revenue consistently. This model can definitely be disruptive and can help organizations to understand where they stand as of now and how they can really grow exponentially. If you look at some of the models that earlier were there, like Carnegie Mellon's PCMA model and also CMMI. So PCMM is gone because then they talked more about documentations and a lot of quality processes, too much of documentation. I read their book. The book that they have is not very huge. You'll not get bandwidth to read such a big book to understand a lot of documentations. Why they failed, they were not connected to the business, developing people and like process follow too much of processes. And that's when it failed. In early 2000, it was quite famous. Wipro, Mindtree, TCS, and Infosys declared that we have PCMM level 5. And after 2 years, I don't see the consistency in getting that certificates or the need of that certificate for this business to grow. In fact, this can definitely help. Why WFM maturity model? It can tell you that if you have a level C, level B, level A, it can tell you that like customers will look at that and hey, your company has got a level C, which means that you should be having seamless process, strategy, and the technology process. If I give you a project or if I give you a business, I'm sure that you people can seamlessly execute it without any problem. So that is one thing, and also the investors. And people who are going to join your company also would look at that, what kind of company is that? Like, where do they stand? If they stand like a level A, level B, something, companies should be having great processes and the strategy and tools and technologies in place. One is going to attract the clients. Second thing is you're going to have your revenue assured and optimized continuously. Third thing that you will be able to attract people, you'll be able to invite more of investors coming in to your company, and any company would want to have merger and acquisition would definitely be looking at these kind of quality standards. Today, WFM has no quality standards followed, and we try to follow whatever our own model that doesn't really work. But standardizing is something very important. Globally, you'll be able to see the where do you stand. Benchmarking globally is something very important. You could be an IT services, a BPO, KPO, or contact center, any of the industries. We'll be able to help assess where you stand now and also help you know how you can really grow exponentially. This is a model, future of model where you can benchmark your organization and see that this is not just WFM alone. This is for entire organization. Thanks, Arvind, for
Thanks, Shiva, for adding
sharing.
here.
Yeah.
So I think Narayan also spoke about the process, setting up process, especially on capacity side. I heard him a couple of time calling out SOPs, putting SOPs, etc., etc. Now, there are companies who follow COPC standard. There are companies like us, we follow ISO. So while there are standards, but again, from a quality perspective, you really look at, are you kind of measuring end-to-end quality within workforce is something, you know, I still, with my experience, I've seen there are companies where we've deployed COPC while we're trying to govern, but there are still loose ends. There are a whole lot of loose ends that we have seen. So how do we kind of bring all these pieces, and are there checkpoints in place that will help us measuring the quality? See, if you look at operations, in operations, we live day in, day out on the quality side. But then workforce, are we doing that? I don't think so, or I haven't seen that. What I've been kind of trying to do is trying to see if there are organizations where we can deploy that. Wherever I kind of worked, we're trying to see how do we kind of deploy certain process checkpoints that can help measure the quality of workforce and the delivery that we do for our clients. With that, I'll quickly move to the next slide, where some of the tools with my experience. Okay, coming to quality consciousness, there's a little bit of survey information that we've got from web. It's if you look at improved customer experience. Now with Foster survey, 72% of the customers says that it's important, most important to value their time. All they're saying is don't waste my time by escalations. They're saying if you have a right process, right tools, right technology, right sort of, and everything is perfectly fine. Obviously, there's no escalation. So you can spend that time, customer can spend that time on a value adds. So quality process, address accuracy, speed, leading to increased customer satisfaction. If you have satisfied customers, obviously you will see a business thriving. Increased productivity. A Gallup study says engaged employees lead to 21% higher productivity, which means that if you have the right KPI for your team members, you know, they're pretty clear what they expected to do, deliver day in, day out. If we have well-oiled process in place, it's a lot more easier for them to, one, work in that environment. There's no confusion or chaos. With that, if you look at by focusing workforce quality, organization can ensure that employees are satisfied and engaged, leading to higher productivity rates. So that's what I meant here. The compliance with the regulations, that something is given. Obviously, you know that there are law of the lands that team need to follow when we do scheduling, when we issue contract and all that. We need to make sure that we adhere that. So that's, again, workforce plays a critical role when it comes to scheduling and making sure that there's no breaches. Because we, as a workforce team, we closely watch some of these, you know, actions and ensure that if there are violations, we call out to HR. Now, reduce operating cost, society for HR management. Now, employee turnover cost. Now, what it says is basically, you know, if you really have a happy employee and a good employee, if you're able to retain those employees, one, you get a better output. They understand the culture well. In case you lose employee, you do a fresh hiring. One, the ramp time is higher, and the cost, because most of the time what I've seen is we hire more than the existing cost. So your typically cost goes up by 50 to 75%, including the ramp. By driving quality in WFM, organization can reduce employee turnover rates and associate cost. So basically it's all about retaining your people, right set of people, and making sure that you invest in them and you get the right level, you keep them motivated. And all this, if you do, then it helps you improve reputation of your organization. You'll attract more client. You know, your clients will be happy, improve customer satisfaction, etc. I'll move to the next slide. Now, this is basically, there are some tools, you know, that we've been working, and the areas where we can implement. Now, forecasting, there are standard tools available in the market, and sometimes, you know, Very recently, I spoke about Collabria, where there's a technology available. These guys are working on ML technology. There are variant tool where again there is AI based, but there are a lot of companies who have their own tools. They're using R, they're using Python, and there are multiple forecasting model that they have. So having a standard forecasting model that can be used by, so it's again a best fit model that can be used. Volume and forecast accuracy, having some measure on the forecast accuracy, plus minus 10% or 5%, again, depend on a SOW in the client, and then measuring in the form of table F. Scheduling again, scheduling accuracy is the other one, having those measures in place. And all that is basically having a scorecard just for the workforce team and how you're doing in terms of quality of deliveries. Capacity planning, having a long-term capacity plan so that you don't stress hiring and you have a line of sight of your future hiring. Again, omni-channel consolidation, there are kind of organizations working with just to improve efficiencies, bringing your voice and chat together, and then how they're measuring the accuracy of your planning. Labor and regulation, making sure that there is a zero violation for labor and regulation, because a lot of times what happens is, and this is with my recent experience, what I've seen is we go overboard. If volumes are high, certain times we don't realize that someone has already spent 50 hours as per labor law or an OT, and the regular time they've already spent, which is like 9 hours given by the labor laws, and you land up exceeding violating those labor laws. So keeping a check and a strict watch on some of these things will help you building your reputation, organization reputation. Short-term planning, measuring, again, having a measure on that. STR, how do you transfer your schedules, making sure that there's a pretty good handover between RT and schedulers. And then there are measurement systems in place. There are checkpoints in place. So we have certain checkpoints in place. We have these STR, SWIs, which is more for, again, when you're transferring your capacity from a planners to a scheduler, there has to be handover process. There has to be checkpoint. There has to be measure so that you can drive accountability both sides, starting from planner to a scheduler to RTA. And again, coming to RTM measures, what if chart is pretty common. I heard from a couple of other leaders as well, having a reforecasting in place, making sure that escalation rates are measured, or critical errors are measured. So some of those checkpoints in place, or having a scorecard that will help, measuring the performance of your team as well as measuring the quality of overall workforce. And all this, if you do, then there has to be governance and there has to be some kind of CEO center of expertise who should really keep a check on all that, which is through audit, making sure that we have right SOPs and SOPs are kind of updated in a timely manner. On a skill development, while we expect a lot from team members, but how much time we're spending on their own development. So that's again critical. And how we are scaling up, because as a workforce, function is also evolving, or almost like over a period of time. And there's a constant evolution. Be it technology, be it process side, the expectation from client is increasing. So how do we make sure that we are upskilling our folks? Once we upskill, how do we kind of validating their skill sets? At the same time, having a corrective actions and making sure that you also, while you're managing performance, you're also making sure that you're managing your bottom quartiles. So that's a little bit of area of implementation where we can measure quality, we can implement quality and control. It might sound very, very basic, but when we really deploy some of these things on the ground, I'm sure there are a set of challenges we encounter. So that's what about quality. I'll pause here and move to the next slide, and we can take up questions later. Now, by doing all this, ensuring that we have a quality, entire quality management process in place, it helps you operating in a lot more better fashion. It helps you optimize your productivity. It helps you improve your efficiencies. So all these measures, if you have, why I'm saying is if you have clearly defined process and you have governance, you can avoid chaos. you know where you need to invest. These are the areas of opportunity, or these are the processes that you can eliminate. And the basic example is kind of reporting, where I keep hearing in my discussions from all the people that, we have done reporting optimization. But then I still see that people work in silos. There are accounts where they'll be doing a reporting. There are accounts, there are like 10 accounts, 10 people doing the same metrics reporting. Why can't we just bring all that reporting and have one consolidated reporting that can cater to all the accounts, LOBs? So you reduce, you are more efficient, one. Your reporting is a lot more cleaner. It's automated. And then obviously, there is some level of, you can obviously eliminate the data errors. So that's a little bit on quality and quality measure. I'll skip because all this I already spoke about. High quality workforce, if you're aligned to their goal and all that, something I already spoke about. So I'll pause here for Q&A if there are questions.
Any questions from anyone? Arvind?
Thank you.
Arvind, I have a question. It is a benefit for all the audience.
Right, Shiva.
Share me some of the best practices that you're following. Maybe you would have followed in your previous company, and also like a year in this. What are the challenges that you faced to bring this process excellence? Right from like a nothing to bringing something. Then maybe like there in all silos, and how do you really get this transformation done? Maybe like if you could share one or two stories of what you've done, that'll be a great learning.
So it's like, I can pick up a very recent example, old habit die hard. Now we are working on a massive project of automation on BI side. Now the challenge, while there's a whole lot of investment we have done, and there are a bunch of people who are kind of working on the reports, they've been doing report in certain fashion. They've been churning data in certain fashion. Now, the dependency on them is because they're culling out data and putting the data into SharePoint, and then the BI team, which is more of automation team, cull the data and put into BI. The multiple layers of obviously cleanup need to be done in BI. But every time we see some error. And there are also certain times people are manually adjusting some of these things despite of telling them that, just send the rawest form of information, we'll clean up. But people, they have a habit of just, making sure that they try to add some input that mess up the whole process. You will again go back to the whole activity. Again, you're taking out information, data, and then you're again. So the entire work, we've been kind of putting effort from almost like 8-9 months. We've been trying to fix that. So the amount of education we have done to the team members, there are certain times we have to take a hard call. So that is one challenge. The other challenge is, the expectation also keep changing as you progress and keep working on some of these things. Expectation from your side, because you're also continuously learning in the process, and then from the leadership, both keep changing. So how do you maintain the pace with that is also important. So these are two big challenges. I think from a technology perspective, it's there. So that's more on BI. But if you look at from a quality perspective, if you don't put a checkpoints, people keep making those mistakes. You keep deploying, and I remember just to deploy one what if an RTA process, it took 4 months for us to deploy that process. It's a basic process. But then you keep educating team members because they're missing out something or the other. So it's a constant education, constant checkpoints in the audits that you're putting in place.
Thanks, Arvind. A great answer. So here there's one question from Vish Kasturi. Great insight. Thank you, is what he's saying. And what are the 3 top quality attributes you would suggest to ensure WFM team is providing a quality of services?
So if I look at and from a top 3 quality attribute, one would be making sure that you have a measurement system in place. For whatever you do, you need to make sure that you have measurement in terms of metrics. That is one, and hopefully I've understood the question right. And then obviously you can have a follow-up question in case the answer is not appropriate. I will retry once again. The second is making sure that you invest in your people. That is the other one. The third one is, while you have KPIs and everything, make sure that you also have a checkpoints in place. And all this is somewhere attached to their performance plan. If not 100%, some weightage has to be assigned to their performance plan so that there is a little bit of seriousness, there is a little bit of kind of people, come forward. And they basically, they adopt it, lack of a better word, I would say. So hope I answered Kasturi, your question.
Thanks, Arvind.
Okay.
So since there's not been present physically, so we'll take if there is any other further questions on this. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Would you like to share anything else? No, I see some of the further slides on it, Arvind, or it's about it.
No, I think I have covered it pretty much. Yeah, in case team has any question, feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to answer some of those details.
Okay. Last question from my side. If any organization would want to start a quality standards, what is it they should really look at as health check? And what is the step 1, step 2, step 3 process? If you could guide on that.
See, it's again depend on when you're saying quality process, right? You need to understand from maturity model, again, picking up your maturity model, where the organization stands. And from there, you need to start building it. Because if I start from the end, a lot of things are already in place. And the very first thing is to have a process in place. Look at your process, draw a process map, look at eliminate the waste. So look at some of those things. Those are the starting point for any organization or any kind of quality work that you want to do. That are you doing everything right? Understand your process. What is expectation from the organization or from your client, and then draw the process. And then define the right process for anything. It could be anything within a workforce function. It could be RTA, it could be capacity planning, it could be anything. Because every organization and clients operate differently. So while you can have a very high level process defined, but then obviously there are adjustments that you need to make.
So thanks, Arvind, for your insight. I see that Vinith is still there. Vinith, I think.
I think Arvind had some very interesting context to bring out. And just out of curiosity, Arvind, while I'm a great fan of maturity model, as I look into 2030, my belief, and this is my belief, is that maturity model is obsolete that we will not see in 2030 and onwards.
I agree.
So what should be next 5-6 years journey that we have to undertake? I mean, we cannot leave it today. That's for reality. But we know what is going to come across. It may not live its utility 5-7 years down the line. So any suggestions you may have, any thoughts that you may have of how to deal with it?
Right. See, and you rightly said, and the way I'm kind of reading your point, you said, say 2030 will not have maturity, because by the time, a lot of these companies will get to a stage where we are at like pretty much mature. We'll have, because of kind of investment, a lot of companies are doing on a workforce tools. There are companies who are doing workforce service itself. I'm sure a lot of these things will evolve, and what we're talking about, stage 1, 2, 3 or 4 will totally get obsolete. Now, the way I look at the last stage of maturity model, where the technology plays a critical role, and with RPA, Chat GPT, a lot of these things coming into play. Majority of things will get automated, but it doesn't mean that human will be completely eliminated. There'll be still good part of intellectual work, or the experience will still play a critical role. While you can say, a lot of things can be done through historical data, but I know there are processes where we deployed RP and we eliminated RPS because we don't see RPS taking a lot more time than human, because the amount of data they're churning using machine learning and all, they're taking a lot of information and data, and then they're delivering those processes. Whereas as a manual process, we are able to do a lot more faster. So there will be some adjustments. So there'll be learning as we kind of technology keep evolving. There'll be continuous learning from technology perspective as well. And that is where human and their intelligence and the experience will come into play.
Yeah. Just thinking aloud as well as I build on it. Maybe it may be a food for thought where some of the hackathons could be undertaken in future, Dr. Shiva, where we may invite ideas from people, right? I mean, at least I for know I'm into the obsolescence stage and will prefer to stay in that stage. It will be good to get the fresh perspectives. And the way my thought process is running right now, or mind is running right now, is where is the compulsive need? I mean, so if I was to, let's say, look at a brand Uber, and does Uber have a workforce management? Answer is yes. Do they have a workforce management absolutely aligned and following the 7 disciplines of conventional disciplines of workforce management? Answer is yes. But if one was to look at it from a maturity standpoint, how well evolved is Uber from a WFM practice standpoint? Obviously, the answer is that they are not as invested. So fundamental question is how much of, and this is again my belief, that workforce management for whichever industry is highly underinvested in. And since they are highly underinvested from a technology standpoint, from a systemic engineering standpoint, is the reason where the penchant and hunger both is very high on investing in the technology. Funds does not come in, so innovation is maximum in workforce management on looking at some of the smaller homegrown indigenous tools. And when I say homegrown, it is right from the production floor, right from the workforce management desktop is where most of the innovations have been happening all this while. This is, as I think, Arvind, you did make a mention, from 1980s till now, in these 4 decades that we have seen, the evolution of industry has happened in that direction. So the hackathon that we may want to run could be looking at Uber as an example. Where is the compelling need for us to have a maturity model in a very evolved technology setup? I mean, if one was to look at it, IT industry in itself is the first pass where maturity model for a software testing, coding came into existence, right? And with that as the basis, so gamification came into play. Today, even an RTA robo, RPA robo, in itself has to undergo through a huge cycle of learning and improving the accuracy and enhancing the efficiency, so to say. So if we were to summarize all of them, what component are we going to be impacted by disruption in the maturity model? Number one. Number two, as workforce management professionals, the way we are experiencing the challenge on our production floor in our day-to-day lives, what is the role of maturity model that is going to evolve as organizational maturity improves, technology deployment starts happening, and the resource starving that happens today, I mean, resource in terms of investment into technology for workforce management, as that starts scaling up, where is the compelling need of maturity model in, let's say, 5 years from now? But your session was very, very thought-provoking for me. It was good to sit back and reflect upon, Arvind. So thanks for
thanks, Vinny. Thanks for nice word. Yeah. So just to add, what I was thinking while you're talking about maturity model. Today, the maturity model has the 5 phase. It might happen, the maturity model will move forward. There'll be a kind of shift in the maturity model. It moves from E, the E become your A. And then from there, the way technology is evolving, you'll again aspire for the E. So again, the cycle might be different. Right now, if you see, yes, you're right. But might be if you look at 2030, there will be a shift in the maturity model, the way we looked at 80s versus now, 30 versus 50s.
Yeah.
So just thinking,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic.
With that,
Thank you.
technology is
Perfect.
going to be driving factor
All right.
for everything.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Shiva. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you
Shiva.
for the wonderful
Thanks,
session.
Thanks, Vineet.
Vineet.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Partho.
team.
Thanks for your time, all of you. All right, take care.
Thanks.
See you.
Thanks,
Have a good weekend. Bye, one.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Vineet, for suggestion for the hackathon. Definitely, we will take this forward.
Wonderful, Shuklaji. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Partho.